On the docket for today, building custom newel posts and caps for my garage stairs and installing the handrail. Do I have any idea what I'm doing? Of course not. Let's find out how I did. First thing, I had to find a piece of maple ply that was wide enough to make all four sides of the 4.5-inch box, because for some reason I wanted to waterfall the miters, even though no one will ever notice. This cutoff was about perfect. Waterfalling is a bit more complicated than regular miters because you're trying to cut the boards without interrupting the grain pattern. Essentially, you're cutting wedges out of the bottom of the board. To do it, you miter one edge of the board, then flip the board around and miter that piece to length. Then you flip the board around again, cut a miter right up to the very top edge, and then flip it again to trim it to width. You just repeat until you have all four sides. Of course, the fourth miter won't line up with the first miter, so you just put that edge on one of the back corners. For the half newel at the top of the stairs, I just cut regular old 45s from a few different pieces of scrap since I didn't care so much about the grain matching. I'm a fan of the blue tape method of gluing up mitered boxes. It's consistent and easy. And because this is a post, not a box, I didn't even have to care about the glue squeeze out on the inside, which is nice. Gluing up the half newel is a bit trickier because you don't have four sides to match up. I just cut a backer piece to clamp the three-sided box to and called it a day. That backer piece actually would come in handy later at installation time. When the glue dried, I untaped everything and gave it a preliminary sanding to remove the glue stains. When sanding plywood, I usually go right for the higher grits to minimize the chance of burning through the outer veneer. Cabinet grade plywood comes pretty smooth already, so 220 grit is fine. I dry fit the posts and found that my bottom stair was slightly out of level, and the wall the half newel was attached to was way out of plumb. The problem is, I leveled these stairs very nicely, but whoever built this wall didn't level the wall. So the newel post is sitting pretty level on the stairs itself, but there's a huge gap along the wall. Now, I can scribe this to the wall, which is probably what I'm gonna have to do, which is annoying. Or we can put trim there. The problem with scribing it is I have to scribe both sides because it's built like a half box. So scribing both sides of that to match is going to be very, very difficult. And I've got a little bit of play here against the trim, but not a ton. Ultimately, I just scribed it to the wall using a jigsaw and an orbital sander. It's not perfect, but anyone who presses their head against the drywall behind my utility sink to check can get right out of my house. Thank you very much. The main newel post also needed to be leveled slightly, but that was fixed with just a 1/2 degree bevel cut on the base. Next, I measured where the handrail would sit on each post with a piece of scrap clamped to each end. I marked the stair height of 35 inches onto my level so that I could get a perfectly straight line from the nosing of the stair to where I wanted the top of the handrail to land. I cut the posts to length on the miter saw, leaving a couple inches above my handrail height. Now for installation. I marked out exactly where I wanted each post to sit on the stair and glued and screwed a stack of plywood blocks just smaller than the inside of each post to the stairs. Then I squirted a ton of PL Premium Construction adhesive inside the posts and put them in place. Honestly, that and a few finish nails probably would have held the bottom post just fine, but I went for broke and added 3 GRK screws as well to make sure that nothing moved. I drilled 1/2-inch holes to bury the screw heads, which I plugged with maple scraps from the stair treads, so everything matched nicely. It might now be the strongest post in my house. That PL Premium dries like concrete. Handrail time. I made a template from a piece of scrap to find the angles with, and transferred that to the handrail and cut it all out on the miter saw. It's about 99% perfect, which is good enough for garage stairs. With the template where I wanted, I transferred the angles onto the handrail itself and then cut that out on the miter saw. I made it easier for myself by making sure that I didn't do anything in between, so the miter saw angle was already set to where I'd cut the template from. Actually, affixing it to the posts was easier than I thought it would be. I drilled holes into the newels at the same angle as the handrail. Then I drilled horizontal holes into each end of the handrail. From there, it was just a matter of screwing in the lags. I used a regular lag bolt for the main newel and a hanger bolt for the top. Waxed the lags before trying to drive them in. And then I wrenched and wrenched and wrenched and wrenched some more, and then some more, and eventually it was tight. This could be good enough, but it's still ugly. Fortunately, caps are simple. Just a few stacked squares of the leftovers from the stair treads on top of a square piece of plywood that fits snug inside the posts. I did fancy it up a little bit with an angled cut on the base piece. This I did with a tenon and jig and the blade tilted about 10 degrees. Of course, I forgot to film that, but this reenactment is as good as the real thing, I think. Glue and nail them together, and you've got a pretty professional looking cap. The only last step was to notch the half newel cap around the doorway trim. Honestly, that was pretty poorly done by me, but again, anyone who notices can go home if they don't like it. Maybe I'll make a better one someday. Balusters next. These were also pretty easy. Spencer Lewis of Insider Carpentry has a fantastic video about how to space and mark these that I'll link to in the description. Basically, I put 3 on each stair, spaced out evenly. I marked the top hole using a laser level, and then drilled out the holes. Because the balusters have shoes, I didn't need to worry about making pretty square holes for the bottom. I just drilled an oversized round hole. Sawzall made quick work of cutting through the metal tubes. Then it was just a matter of jamming them into place, epoxying the base in, and then installing the shoes and tops. Make sure to put these on the baluster before epoxying it in, and triple check that your hex screws are all facing the back. And that's all she wrote. A handrail as solid as anything. I'll apply a few coats of Osmo Polyx oil once the tiling is fully done and I don't have to sand anything off. But for now, it works just fine. Not too shabby for my first set of stairs. No, I won't come over to your house and do yours.